Rawteur. After the Night of the Living Dead's box office success, George A. Romero was banned from using the title in any future sequels, and that decision split the franchise into two. Romero got boxed out of his own franchise because although the film was a hit, there was a major problem. The film's original title was Night of the Flesh Eaters. However, in a stroke of marketing genius, the film's distributors chose to change the name to Night of the Living Dead. They felt it would grab more attention, and it did. But the distributor accidentally left off the copyright notice. You know that copyright notice that you see at the front of some movies that says you may get a fine or even face jail time? Well, at the time that this movie came out, that notice was way more important than any of us actually knew. Under the 1909 Copyright Act, US law required that notice to be displayed clearly on every publicly distributed copy of a film. And because the distributor forgot to include the notice after the name change, Night of the Living Dead was immediately placed into the public domain. Anyone could copy it, sell it, remake it without paying Romero or his team a cent. Romero and his partners at Image 10 discovered the problem only after the film began gaining traction. By the time they realized what had happened, pirated prints were already circulating and dozens of local TV stations were airing it for free. Romero and Image 10 sued the distributor, the Walter Reed organization, for negligence in stripping the copyright notice. They won the case, but it was a hollow victory. The distributor went bankrupt, and there were no meaningful damages recovered. From that point on, Night of the Living Dead was legally public domain, and Romero was stuck watching bootlegs of his own work flood the market while he earned next to nothing from it. After the dust settled, Romero and his co-writer Russo had a falling out. They both wanted to continue the story, but they disagreed on the tone. Romero wanted bleak, political horror. Russo leaned more towards campier B-movie energy. So they cut a deal. Russo would retain the right to use the title Living Dead in his movies, while Romero would continue the story, but could never use Living Dead in a title again. I mean, this blew my mind when I finally understood it. I hadn't really looked into it before, but I always wondered why Romero's films were called Of the Dead and why they felt so different from the Living Dead sequels. I remember watching Return of the Living Dead and seeing John Russo's name pop up, and it felt like a Mandela effect moment. My brain went, wait, wasn't this Romero's thing? Didn't he make Night of the Living Dead? For the longest time, I had honestly assumed all of these movies were part of the same franchise. Turns out they weren't. They were the result of a creative split and a deal that legally split the zombie genre into two. Romero couldn't call them sequels in the way audiences expected. The title Night of the Living Dead became a brand he wasn't allowed to touch. And in 1990, Romero tried to regain some control. He wrote the screenplay for a remake of Night of the Living Dead, this time directed by Tom Savini. This caused another slight Mandela effect moment for me because the first version I ever saw was this one with Tony Todd. So then years later, the first time I ever searched for it and that black and white version started playing, I was genuinely confused, like, wait, is this even the same movie? So since the original was in the public domain, anyone could remake it. But Romero's 1990 version was now copyrighted, which meant Image 10 could finally make money off the property. The 1990 version also gave Romero a chance to update the story, with a stronger, more active Barbara and more modern effects. But it didn't reverse the name problem. Since he couldn't use Living Dead, Romero created his own naming convention. Then you end up with Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land, Diary, and Survival of the Dead. Meanwhile, Russo leaned into the campy punk horror energy and launched his own string of sequels. Return of the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead Part 2, 3, and more. But the truth is, he was legally locked out of the phrase he helped make iconic. Do you prefer the Living Dead franchise or the Of the Dead franchise? Let me know below, and I think you'll like this video next.